right, so we've already looked at C. The next component that we want to throw in here is investment. Investment is going to look a little bit weird when we first put it up here. And again, this isn't exactly part of this unit, so I just want you to understand that we're putting this model together. You don't have to understand all of the ins and outs of this just yet. All right, so if we're talking about an investment schedule, we had income down at the bottom when we were talking about consumption. Well, now we're going to put GDP down here, which is also income. It's national income as opposed to a consumer's income. Now, what do we want to put up on the top? There are a couple of different things we can use. We can put R as the expected rate of return. We can put I as the interest rate. The way you have to think about investment in this context is not like you go out and you buy a T-bill or you go out and you buy some stock. That's not the investment that we're talking about. Investment in this context of the GDP expenditures approach is business spending, capital investments. If the business is buying capital equipment, then they're probably financing it. The cost of doing that is going to be the interest rate. So that's the cost of your investment. It's not from the consumer's perspective, it's from the perspective of the business when they are building their plant capacity or buying capital equipment or something like that. Now, what we're going to get, and this is where it gets a little weird, is a straight line. Now, why is that relevant? When we go from the consumption schedule, which did not look like that at all, we have our 45-degree reference line, we have our consumption schedule, and we add a constant to that at every single point. That should be parallel. C plus I is now higher than consumption. And this distance is constant because the level of investment was the same at that level of interest rate. Now, what happens when we add government? That's going to bump us up even more. What happens when we add net exports? Well, we're going to subtract that out, and that's going to bring us down a little bit. But what do we end up with when we put all of these things together on this graph? All right, when we put all of this stuff together, we end up with GDP down here. We have our level of spending up here, AE for aggregate expenditures, or your level of total spending. An aggregate just means a sum, or you're putting a bunch of things together, you're aggregating them. We have our 45-degree line. And now we have our aggregate expenditures. Now, you may see referenced in some of the stuff that you've gotten from me, the Keynesian cross. This is the Keynesian cross. You have your 45-degree line and you have your line intersecting it. Now, what does this represent? When our level of spending is above our reference line, right here, where it's too high, that tells us that we have an inflationary gap. When our level of spending is below our 45-degree line, and it's too low, that is our recessionary gap. Neither one of those those things is a situation we want to be in, and there's an awful lot of government policy that is directed at trying to keep us in balance. Inflation means your economy is too hot, the velocity of money is too fast, we have too much spending happening, and we need to do something to bring that under control. We have prices that are going up. That's what inflation means. It's a general price level. You've got to slow the economy down and cool it off. With a recessionary gap, your economy is too sluggish. Velocity of money is too low, thinking about how it moves through the circular flow model. And if you don't have money being spent, then businesses don't have the revenue to keep employing workers, so then your unemployment goes up, and that leads to a lot of other problems. So, what's nice about this is that all the components of your GDP formula are the same components in your aggregate expenditures curve. So I wanted to go ahead and introduce that to you now, just so you can see how to put the parts together, even though you don't really have to know this model for quite a while yet.